You will confess." The words echoed through the throne room like a death sentence. Ilara felt her knees threatening to buckle, but she forced herself to remain standing. Every eye in the court was fixed on her, hundreds of wolves whose power she could feel pressing against her skin like a physical weight. She had no wolf to shield her, no inner strength to draw upon. She was defenseless, and they all knew it. "Your Majesty, I did not take the Moonstone Shard. I would never." Her voice sounded small even to her own ears, a whisper against the storm of accusation that had brought her to this moment. Alpha King Theron Nightshade rose from his throne, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. He was magnificent and terrifying, well over 6 feet of pure predatory grace, with eyes that gleamed like molten silver, and hair as black as a moonless night. For 300 years, he had ruled the 5 kingdoms, and his power was absolute. The artifact was kept in the Honi restricted vault. Only 5 people have access to that vault. You are one of them. His voice was cold, clinical, as if he were discussing the weather, rather than her impending execution. The evidence is clear. Ilara opened her mouth to protest again, but Lady Vivian Blackthorn stepped forward, her crimson gown swishing elegantly across the marble floor. She was beautiful in the way that dangerous things often are, with sharp features and sharper ambition. As the king's chief advisor and rumored future queen, her word carried immense weight. "Your Majesty, perhaps mercy is warranted. She is just an Omega, after all. Weak-minded, easily manipulated. Someone could have used her without her knowledge." The false kindness in Vivian's tone made Ilara's stomach turn. This was the woman who had orchestrated everything, who had planted evidence and whispered poison in the king's ear. But Ilara had no proof, only the sick certainty that came from years of watching and being overlooked. "Mercy?" Theron's laugh was harsh. "The Moonstone Shard is one of the 7 ancient artifacts that maintain the barrier between our world and the Shadow Realm. Its theft is not a minor offense. It is treason of the highest order." He descended the steps from his throne, each footfall deliberate and measured. "The penalty for treason is death." The room spun. Ilara tried to breathe, but her lungs would not cooperate. This could not be happening. She had spent 24 years being invisible, insignificant, beneath notice. She shelved books, cleaned manuscripts, kept her head down. How had she gone from invisible to condemned in the span of a single day? "Please," she whispered, hating the desperation in her voice but unable to stop it. "I am telling you the truth. I did not do this." Theron stopped 3 feet away from her, close enough that she could smell the wild scent of pine and winter storms that clung to him. His eyes bored into hers, searching for something she could not. "Name." For a moment, just a heartbeat, she thought she saw something flicker in those silver depths. Doubt, perhaps, or curiosity. But then, Vivian spoke again. "The guards found her attempting to leave the palace grounds at midnight, Your Majesty, with a packed bag. If that is not proof of guilt and intent to flee, I do not know what is." Lies. All lies. Ilara had been summoned to the library by an unsigned note, told that an emergency required her presence immediately. When she arrived, guards had been waiting. But who would believe her word against Lady Blackthorn's? "Take her to the lower cells," Theron commanded, turning away. "At dawn, we will proceed with the execution." The guards moved forward, their hands iron grips on her arms. Ilara's vision blurred with tears she refused to shed. She would not give them the satisfaction. She would not break. But as they dragged her toward the massive doors of the throne room, something happened. The ancient stone beneath their feet began to tremble. At first it was subtle, a vibration that could have been mistaken for distant thunder. Then the trembling grew stronger, more insistent, until the entire palace seemed to shudder with some vast, awakening presence. The guards released Ilara in shock, stumbling backward. Courtiers gasped and clutched at pillars for support. Even Theron whirled around, his body tensing into a fighter's stance. And then the shadows moved. Not the natural shadows cast by torch and moonlight, but something, Older, deeper, more sentient. They poured from the corners of the room like liquid darkness, coalescing in the center of the throne room into a shape that made every wolf present drop to one knee instinctively. All except Alara, who stood frozen, transfixed by what was manifesting before her eyes. The Guardians were legend, creatures from the time before time, when the first wolves walked the earth and magic was wild and untamed. They served only the truest bloodline, the original royal family, from which all other lines descended. No guardian had appeared in over 500 years. Most believed they had passed into myth. But there was no mistaking what stood before them now. It was massive, easily 12 feet tall, with a body that seemed to be carved from living shadow and starlight. Its form was lupine but wrong. Too large, too ancient, with eyes that held galaxies and teeth that could rend reality itself. Power radiated from it in waves that made Alara's bones ache and her blood sing with a recognition she did not understand. The Guardian turned its immense head, surveying the room with those cosmic eyes. Every wolf it looked upon trembled. When its gaze passed over Theron, the Alpha King bowed his head, acknowledging the presence of something far older and more powerful than himself. Then the Guardian looked at Alara. Time seemed to stop. The air itself held its breath. And slowly, impossibly, the ancient creature lowered its massive head until its muzzle nearly touched the ground at her feet. The gesture was unmistakable. Submission, recognition, reverence. The throne room erupted into chaos. Courtiers shouted in confusion and fear. Guards drew weapons uselessly. Vivian's face had gone pale as death, her carefully constructed composure shattering. And Theron stared at Alara as if seeing her for the first time, his expression a complex mixture of shock, disbelief, and something that might have been awe. "That is impossible," Vivian hissed, recovering her voice. "She is nobody. An Omega. Wolfless. This must be some trick, some dark magic." But the Guardian remained bowed before Alara, waiting. She could feel something stirring inside her now, something that had been sleeping her entire life. It felt like waking up, like remembering something crucial she had forgotten. It felt like coming home. Theron raised his hand, and silence fell instantly. When he spoke, his voice was carefully controlled, but Alara could hear the undercurrent of shock beneath the surface. The Guardians bow to none save the bloodline of First Light, the original royal family, from whom my own line descended 10 generations ago. He took a step closer to Alara, his eyes never leaving her face. They cannot be compelled or deceived. Their recognition is absolute. "But she has no wolf," someone protested from the crowd. "She has no power. How can she be of the First Light?" The Guardian's growl was low and resonant, a sound that seemed to come from the earth itself. Several wolves whimpered and backed away. The message was clear. Do not question. Alara found her voice, though it shook. "I do not understand. I am just a librarian. I have never been anyone important." Theron studied her with an intensity that made her skin prickle with awareness. The First Light bloodline was thought extinct 3 centuries ago, wiped out in the Great Purge. If you carry that blood, someone went to great lengths to hide you. Understanding dawned in his silver eyes, and his expression hardened. And someone went to great lengths to ensure you would die before that truth could come to light. He turned to face his court, his voice ringing with authority. "The charges against Alara Thorne are hereby dismissed. She is under my personal protection until we determine the truth of her lineage. Anyone who harms her will answer to me directly." Vivian stepped forward, her composure recovered, but her eyes blazing with barely concealed fury. "Your Majesty, surely you do not mean to grant such protection based solely on this. This could be a trick, an illusion. We should investigate thoroughly before making such declarations. Are you questioning the judgment of a guardian, Lady Blackthorn?" Theron's tone was deceptively soft, but the threat beneath it was unmistakable. Vivian's jaw clenched. "Of course not, Your Majesty. I merely advocate for caution." "Your caution is noted." Theron turned back to Alara, and for the first time since she had been dragged before his throne, his expression softened slightly. "Can you stand?" Alara realized she was shaking, her entire body trembling with shock and the strange energy that continued to pulse through her veins. "I think so." He held out his hand. She stared at it for a long moment, at the strength in those fingers, the faint scars that marked a warrior's life. Taking the hand of the Alpha King felt like stepping off a cliff into unknown territory. But the Guardian still waited at her. Feet, patient and eternal, and something in her chest urged her forward. She placed her hand in his. The moment their skin touched, electricity shot through her, so intense she gasped. Theron's eyes widened fractionally, and she knew he felt it too. This connection, this pull that defied explanation. The mate bond, a small voice whispered in the back of her mind. But that was impossible. Alpha Kings did not bond with powerless Omegas. Fate did not work that way. Except she was not powerless. Was she? Not if the Guardian spoke true. Not if she carried the blood of the first light. Theron pulled her gently to her feet, his grip steady and warm. "Come. We have much to discuss, and you are not safe in the open." He addressed his second in command, a stern-faced beta named Marcus. "Seal the palace. No one enters or leaves until I give explicit permission. And find me High Scholar Aldrich. I need every record we have on the First Light bloodline and the Guardians." Marcus bowed. "At once, Your Majesty." As Theron led Alara toward the private corridors behind the throne, the Guardian moved with them, its massive form flowing like smoke. She could feel the weight of hundreds of eyes on her back, sense the whispers already beginning. Her life had irrevocably changed in the span of minutes. Everything she thought she knew about herself had been a lie. The Omega who shelved books was gone. In her place stood someone she did not recognize, someone who commanded the respect of ancient powers, and had the Alpha King's protection. Someone people would want dead. If you are enjoying this story, do not forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories like this one. Theron's private study was a revelation of dark wood, leather-bound books, and weapons mounted on walls. It was masculine and powerful, much like the man himself. He released her hand reluctantly once they were inside, and Alara immediately felt the loss of his warmth. The Guardian settled in the corner, its form becoming less distinct, more shadow-like, but its presence remained palpable. "Sit," Theron commanded, gesturing to a chair near the fireplace. When Alara hesitated, his expression softened marginally. "Please, you have had a significant shock. Sit before you fall down." She sank into the offered chair gratefully. Her legs had been threatening to give out for the past 5 minutes. Theron poured something amber into a crystal glass and brought it to her. "Drink, it will help." The liquid burned going down, but it did help, spreading warmth through her chest and steadying her nerves. She watched as Theron paced before the fire, his movements restless, predatory. "Tell me everything," he said finally. "Start from the beginning. Who are your parents? Where were you born? How did you come to be at my palace?" Alara wrapped her hands around the glass, grateful for something to hold on to. "I do not remember my parents. I was found as an infant in the ruins of Ashwood Village after the fire. The entire village had been destroyed, everyone dead. I was the only survivor, hidden in a root cellar." She saw Theron's expression sharpen with interest. "Continue." "The pack that found me brought me to the Silvermoon Orphanage. I grew up there, among the other unwanted children. When I was 16, the palace put out a call for assistance in the library. I had always loved books, and I tested well enough to be accepted." She looked down at her hands. "I have been here 8 years, working, invisible. Nothing remarkable ever happened to me until today." "Ashwood Village," Theron murmured, his eyes distant. "That fire happened 24 years ago. The official report stated it was an accident, a hearth fire that spread during a windstorm." His gaze snapped back to her, sharp and assessing. But fires do not kill wolves, Elara. We heal too quickly. An entire village does not simply burn to death. The implication hung in the air between them. You think it was intentional, Elara whispered. I think, Theron said carefully, that someone wanted to ensure every person in that village died. And I think they believed they had succeeded. A knock at the door interrupted them. At Theron's command, High Scholar Aldrich entered, his arms laden with ancient tomes and scrolls. He was elderly by wolf standards, his hair silver, and his face lined with the wisdom of centuries. His eyes widened when he saw the guardian in the corner, and he performed a deep, respectful bow. Your Majesty, I brought everything we have on the First Light bloodline and the Guardians, though I must say, I never expected to see one with my own eyes. He set his burden on Theron's desk with a heavy thud. What can you tell us, old friend? Theron asked. Aldrich adjusted his spectacles and opened the oldest-looking tome, its pages yellowed with age. The First Light bloodline was the original royal family, descended directly from the moon goddess herself, according to Mo. Legend. They possessed abilities far beyond normal wolves. They could commune with the ancient magic, command the elements, see across vast distances, and their wolves were unlike any others. Pure white, massive, with eyes that held the moon's own light. He looked at Elara with open curiosity. The Guardians were created by the goddess to protect her bloodline. They are bound to those who carry the purest concentration of First Light blood. If a Guardian has bowed to you, child, then you are, undeniably, of that lineage. But how is that possible? Elara asked. If the bloodline was destroyed 300 years ago. Aldrich turned pages carefully, his finger tracing lines of text written in an ancient script. The Great Purge was orchestrated by a faction that feared the First Light's power. They believed that such concentrated power in one bloodline was dangerous, that it made the royal family too powerful to challenge. They struck during the festival of the full moon, when the family was gathered together. It was meant to be a complete annihilation. Theron had gone very still. But clearly it was not complete. No, Aldrich agreed. There were always rumors that one child escaped. An infant, spirited away by a loyal servant. But the rumors were never confirmed, and eventually they faded into legend. He looked at Elara with something like reverence. Until now. The weight of it all pressed down on Alara's shoulders. I do not feel special. I do not feel powerful. I have never even shifted. How can I be what you claim? The Guardian's voice entered her mind for the first time, deep and resonant, and utterly foreign. Because you were hidden, little light, bound and suppressed, protected through silence and stillness. But protection can become a cage, and cages must be opened when the time comes. Elara gasped, her hand flying to her chest. It spoke to me, in my head. Theron exchanged a significant glance with Aldrich. The Guardians rarely speak. Their words carry the weight of truth and prophecy. What did it say? She repeated the message, her voice shaking. Theron knelt before her chair, bringing himself to her eye level. The gesture was so unexpected, so unlike what she would expect from the most powerful alpha in the world, that she could only stare. Listen to me, Elara. If someone suppressed your wolf, if someone bound your power, it was to keep you alive. The same people who orchestrated the Great Purge would not hesitate to finish what they started if they knew you existed. His hand came up, hovering near her face but not quite touching. But you are not alone now. I will protect you. We will find out who did this and why. And we will awaken what has been sleeping inside you. Why? The question escaped before she could stop it. Why would you protect me? You thought I was a traitor an hour ago. Something flickered in those silver eyes, something raw and unguarded. Because the moment you took my hand, something I have not felt in 3 centuries. The pull of the mate bond. He said it quietly, as if the words were pulled from somewhere deep inside him. And because if you truly are First Light, then you may be the only thing standing between this kingdom and the darkness that has been gathering at our borders. What do you think will happen next? Leave your predictions in the comments below. Elara could not breathe, could not think. The Alpha King had just claimed she was his mate, the most powerful man in 5 kingdoms, who could have anyone, who had Lady Vivian and countless others vying for his attention, was claiming an Omega librarian as his destined partner. You cannot mean that, she whispered. The mate bond is sacred. You would know, wouldn't you? You would feel it? I feel it, Theron confirmed, his gaze intense. A pull toward you that I cannot explain or deny. A need to protect you that goes beyond duty or logic. When you are in danger, my wolf rages. When you are near, everything in me settles. That is the bond, Elara. Whether you feel it yet or not. Did she feel it? She thought about the electricity when they touched, the way her body had instinctively trusted him despite her fear, the strange warmth that bloomed in her chest when he looked at her. I feel something, she admitted, but I do not understand it. Theron smiled then, a real smile that transformed his severe features into something breathtaking. You will. In time. He stood, his hand, finally making contact with her cheek, just a brief touch that sent sparks dancing across her skin. But first, we need to break whatever binding was placed on you. We need to free your wolf. Aldrich cleared his throat delicately. That will not be a simple matter, Your Majesty. Bindings of that strength, capable of suppressing an entire wolf for decades, require powerful magic and specific rituals to break. We will need a specialist. Then find one, Theron commanded. Find the best. I do not care what it costs or how far they must travel. I want them here within 3 days. There is one other matter, Your Majesty, Aldrich said carefully. If Lady Elara is truly First Light, she has a claim to the throne, a claim that supersedes your own. The room went silent. Elara's heart hammered against her ribs. I do not want the throne, she said quickly. I never asked for any of this. I just want to understand what I am. Theron studied her for a long moment, and she could not read his expression. The throne is not something you ask for, Elara. It is a burden and a responsibility. But Aldrich is correct. First Light blood carries absolute authority. If you choose to press your claim, the law would support you. He tilted his head slightly. Does that frighten you? The idea of that much power? Yes, she answered honestly. It terrifies me. Good, Theron said. Anyone who wants power should never have it. Those who fear it are the only ones who might use it wisely. He turned to Aldrich. Draw up the documents recognizing Lady Elara as a member of the First Light bloodline, with all rights and protections that entails, and keep this information restricted. Only those we trust absolutely can know the full truth. What about Lady Blackthorn? Aldrich asked. She was present in the throne room. She knows about the Guardian. Theron's expression hardened. Lady Blackthorn was very eager to see Elara executed today. Very eager indeed. Have her movements monitored. Discreetly. I want to know everyone she meets with, every message she sends. He moved to the window, gazing out at the palace grounds below. Vivian is brilliant and ambitious. She has been positioning herself to become queen for decades. If she discovers that Elara's claim supersedes any power she might gain through marriage to me, she will become dangerous. Elara felt cold. You think she was behind the theft? Behind the attempt to frame me? I think, Theron said slowly, that the timing is remarkably convenient. An artifact is stolen, you are framed, and you would have been executed before anyone could question the evidence too closely. If the Guardian had not appeared, you would be dead by dawn, and whoever wanted you dead would have succeeded. He turned back to face her, his expression grim. We are dealing with someone who knows what you are, Elara. Someone who has been waiting for an opportunity to eliminate you. The next 3 days passed in a blur of revelations and preparations. Ilara was moved from her tiny servant's quarters to a suite in the royal wing, complete with guards stationed at her door at all times. The guardian remained with her constantly, its presence both comforting and unsettling. She was not allowed to return to the library or interact with anyone outside of Theron's most trusted inner circle. It felt like being in a luxurious prison. Theron came to see her every evening, bringing reports of his investigation and slowly helping her understand the complex politics of the court. She learned that there were factions who resented his long rule, who whispered that 300 years was too long for one wolf to hold power. She learned about the Shadow Realm incursions that had been increasing along the borders, creatures of nightmare slipping through weak points in the barrier. She learned that the 7 ancient artifacts, including the stolen Moonstone Shard, were the only things maintaining that barrier. If all 7 are compromised, the barrier falls, Theron explained one night, sitting across from her in her new sitting room. And if the barrier falls, the Shadow Realm will pour into our world. Everything we know will be destroyed. Ilara hugged her arms around herself. Why would anyone want that? Power, Theron said simply. There are those who believe they can control the shadow creatures, use them as weapons to reshape the world according to their vision. They are wrong, of course. The Shadow Realm does not serve. It only consumes. He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. Whoever stole the Moonstone Shard is working toward the barrier's destruction. And they wanted you dead because they fear what you might become. What am I supposed to become? Ilara asked softly. Theron's eyes met hers across the space between them, and the intensity there made her breath catch. A queen. A warrior. The salvation of us all. Or perhaps just yourself, fully realized and free. Does it matter? You are meant for more than shelving books and being invisible, Ilara. That much is certain. Before she could respond, a knock at the door announced the arrival of the specialist Aldrich had summoned. Theron rose to admit a striking woman with silver-streaked dark hair and eyes that seemed to see too much. She wore robes covered in symbols that glowed faintly in the firelight. Your Majesty, she said with a slight bow. I am Magistra Senna, keeper of the old ways and breaker of bindings. You summoned me to see to a rather unique case. Theron gestured toward Ilara. This is Lady Ilara Thorne. We believe a powerful suppression binding was placed on her as an infant, preventing her wolf from emerging. Can you break it? Senna approached Ilara slowly, her eyes roaming over her with an intensity that made Ilara want to squirm. When she was close enough, she reached out and placed 2 fingers against Ilara's forehead. Ilara felt a surge of foreign energy, probing and searching. Senna gasped and stumbled backward. Theron caught her arm, steadying her. What is it? That is not just a suppression binding. Senna breathed, her face pale. That is a seal. A death seal, woven with blood magic and sacrifice. It was designed to kill her if she ever tried to shift or access her power. Her eyes were wide with horror and awe. Someone loved her very much to cast such a thing. It takes the caster's life to create a death seal. They sacrifice themselves to keep her hidden. The rooms seemed to tilt. Someone had died to protect her. Someone had given their life to ensure she would remain invisible, powerless, alive. Theron's hand found her shoulder, grounding her. Can you break it safely? Yes, Senna said, though she did not sound entirely confident. But it will be excruciating. The seal has been part of her for so long that removing it will feel like tearing away a piece of her soul. And when it breaks, everything it has been holding back will flood through her at once. She will shift for the first time, and given her bloodline, that shift will be violent and overwhelming. Ilara forced herself to speak through the fear clogging her throat. What happens if we leave it in place? Senna's expression was sympathetic. Eventually it will kill you anyway. Death seals are not meant to last forever. Yours has already lasted far longer than should be possible. It is beginning to fracture. Within a month, perhaps 2, it will collapse on its own. When that happens, the release will be uncontrolled. You could destroy everything around you. You could die from the shock. Theron's fingers tightened on her shoulder. Then we break it. Carefully. Under controlled circumstances. He looked down at Alara, his expression fierce. I will be with you. You will not face this alone. Senna nodded. We will need a sacred space. Somewhere with old magic, where the veil between worlds is thin. The ritual circle in the palace catacombs would be ideal. I know the place. Theron. Confirmed. We will do it tonight. The longer we wait, the more danger she is in. And so, as midnight approached, Alara found herself descending ancient stone steps into the depths beneath the palace. The catacombs were old beyond reckoning, their walls carved with symbols that predated written language. The air was thick with power, pressing against her skin like invisible hands. The ritual circle was in a natural cavern, with a ceiling that opened to the night sky far above. Moonlight streamed down, illuminating the intricate patterns carved into the stone floor. The Guardian followed them down, its presence filling the space with even more power. Senna directed Alara to the center of the circle and began arranging candles at specific points, chanting softly in a language that made Alara's bones vibrate. Theron stood just outside the circle, his arms crossed, every line of his body tense with readiness. Whatever happens, he said quietly, remember that I am here. Focus on my voice. Let it guide you back if you get lost. Alara wanted to ask what he meant by lost, but Senna was calling her to kneel in the center of the circle. The Magistra's hands began to glow with pale light as she placed them on either side of Alara's head. This will hurt, Senna warned. Do not fight it. Let the pain flow through you and out. Fighting will only make it worse. If you want to see how this story ends, make sure you are subscribed with notifications on. The first touch of Senna's magic was like being struck by lightning. Alara screamed, her body arcing backward as power surged through her. She could feel the seal, a knot of dark energy wrapped around her core, and she could feel Senna's magic working to unravel it thread by agonizing thread. It hurt. It hurt worse than anything she could have imagined. It felt like being burned alive from the inside out, like every nerve in her body was being flayed. She could hear Theron shouting her name, could feel him, fighting the urge to enter the circle and pull her free. But Senna had warned them both not to interrupt the ritual. The seal began to crack. Alara felt it splinter, felt the first trickles of power seeping through the cracks, and even those small amounts were overwhelming. She could suddenly sense everything. Every wolf in the palace, every heartbeat, every breath. The earth beneath her, ancient and alive. The moon above, calling to something deep in her soul. More cracks, more power flooding. In. She was drowning in it, choking on sensations she had no framework to process. And then, with a sound like shattering glass, the seal broke completely. The scream that tore from Alara's throat was not entirely human. Power exploded outward from her body, a shockwave of pure energy that extinguished every candle and sent Senna flying backward. The Guardian roared, a sound of triumph and recognition. And inside Alara, something woke up. Her wolf. Not the small, subservient creature that most Omegas carried. Not even the strong, proud wolf of an alpha. What rose inside Alara was massive and ancient, a presence that had been sleeping since the world was young. It was pure white light and silver moonbeams, power condensed into lupine form, and it wanted out. Now. The shift took her without warning. Her body tore itself apart and reformed in seconds that felt like hours. Bones broke and reset, muscles expanded, fur erupted across her skin, and through it all, the pain and the terror and the overwhelming sensation of becoming. She heard Theron's voice. Steady, calm, certain. That is it. Let it happen. You are strong enough. You are magnificent. I am here. I will not leave you. You are safe. When it was over, when the last tremor had faded and her new form settled into place, Elara opened eyes that now glowed with lunar light. She stood on 4 legs instead of 2, her body covered in fur so white it seemed to emit its own illumination. She was huge, far larger than any normal wolf, her head level with Theron's chest. The Guardian approached her slowly, its cosmic eyes filled with what could only be described as joy. It touched its muzzle to hers, a gesture of greeting and acknowledgement. "Welcome home, First Light. You have been sleeping too long." Elara's awareness expanded in her wolf form, senses sharper than she had ever imagined possible. She could smell the concern and awe radiating from Senna, who was picking herself up from where she had been thrown. She could hear the rapid beating of Theron's heart, smell the mix of fear and fierce pride that surrounded him. And she could feel the bond between them, no longer muted by the seal. It burned like a golden thread, connecting her chest to his, pulling her toward him with undeniable force. Theron had not moved from his spot at the edge of the circle, though she could see how much it cost him to remain still. "Elara," he said softly, "can you understand me?" She nodded her great head, the movement feeling strange and new. "Do you have control? Or is the wolf too strong?" She considered the question. The wolf was powerful, yes, and its instincts urged her toward several courses of action, running and hunting and claiming the mate whose scent called to her. But she was still herself, still Elara, just more than she had been. She took a careful step forward, then another, until she stood directly before Theron. This close, she could see the silver flecks in his eyes that matched her own fur, could see the tension in his jaw as he fought every instinct to reach for her. Slowly, deliberately, she lowered her head and rested her muzzle against his chest, just over his heart. She felt his breath rush out, felt his hand come up to stroke the fur at her neck, with a gentleness that contrasted sharply with his fearsome reputation. "You are the most beautiful thing I have ever seen," he whispered, and she could hear the truth in his words, feel it through the bond. Senna's voice intruded on the moment, shaky but determined. She should shift back. Maintaining the wolf form requires energy, and she has been through a tremendous ordeal. She needs rest. Elara did not want to shift back. In this form, everything made sense. She was strong and whole and complete. But she could feel the truth in Senna's words, the exhaustion pulling at the edges of her consciousness. She stepped back from Theron and concentrated on her human form, on the shape she had worn for 24 years. The shift back was easier than the first change, though still uncomfortable. Within moments, she stood on 2 legs again, naked and shivering in the cool air of the catacombs. Theron had already removed his cloak and wrapped it around her shoulders before she could fully register her vulnerability. He pulled her against his side, and she went gratefully, too tired to care about propriety or the fact that she was essentially unclothed beneath the cloak. "Can you walk?" he asked. "I think so." But when she tried to take a step, her legs buckled. Theron caught her easily, sweeping her into his arms as if she weighed nothing. "Sleep," he commanded, his voice using just a touch of alpha influence to help her obey. "I have you. You are safe." Elara's eyes were already closing, the exhaustion too powerful to fight. The last thing she heard before darkness claimed her was the Guardian's voice, distant and satisfied. The first light rises, and the darkness trembles. She woke in her bed in the royal wing, sunlight streaming through the windows. For a moment she thought it might have been a dream, some fever-induced hallucination. But then she felt it. Her wolf, curled contentedly in her mind, a presence that was both foreign and intimately familiar. She could feel the power humming beneath her skin, vast and waiting. And she could feel the bond, that golden thread connecting her to Theron, telling her exactly where he was. In the sitting room, just beyond her bedroom door. She could hear him, speaking with someone, his voice low and serious. With her new senses, she could make out every word despite the closed door. "The council is demanding an explanation, Your Majesty." Marcus was saying. Every wolf in the palace felt that surge of power last night. They know something significant happened. They will be told what they need to know, Theron replied. Lady Alara's heritage is confirmed. She is First Light, and she will be formally recognized as such. That will cause problems. Another voice interjected. Lady Blackthorn. Of course she would be here. The old families will see her as a threat to the established order, and if she chooses to press her claim to the throne, then she has every right to do so. Theron cut her off sharply. The law is clear, Vivian. First Light supersedes all other bloodlines. There was a pause, charged with tension. When Vivian spoke again, her voice was carefully controlled. Of course, Your Majesty. I merely point out the political complications. Perhaps a marriage alliance might smooth the transition. Unite the bloodlines officially. Alara's wolf growled at the suggestion, a possessive rumble that reverberated through her chest. She was on her feet and through the door before she consciously decided to move. All three of them turned to look at her, Theron's eyes lighting with relief and something hotter, Marcus looking respectful and curious, and Vivian's expression carefully blank. Lady Alara, Theron said, moving toward her. You should still be resting. I have rested enough. She was surprised by how steady her voice sounded, how much confidence had seeped into her bearing overnight. The Omega who shuffled through corridors with her head down was gone. In her place stood someone who had faced her own transformation and survived. I heard what you were discussing. Vivian's smile was polite and cold. Then you understand the delicate political situation your emergence has created. The stability of the realm depends on careful management of such revelations. Alara met her gaze directly, and something in her expression made Vivian take an involuntary step backward. What I understand, Lady Blackthorn, is that someone in this court wanted me dead. Someone who knew what I was and saw me as a threat. Someone who orchestrated the theft of an ancient artifact and framed me for it, knowing I would be executed before the truth could come to light. The room went utterly silent. Vivian's face had gone pale, but her composure held. Those are serious accusations. Do you have proof? Not yet, Alara admitted, but I will find it. And when I do, whoever is responsible will face justice. She turned to Theron, feeling the bond pull her toward him like gravity. I need to learn to control my wolf, to understand my powers. Someone is working to bring down the barrier between our world and the Shadow Realm, and if I am supposed to be part of stopping that, I need training. Theron's expression was approving, almost proud. Agreed. I will work with you personally. Your wolf is unlike anything I have encountered, but the principles remain the same. He glanced at Marcus and Vivian. We will continue this discussion later. Leave us. Marcus bowed and left immediately. Vivian hesitated, her eyes darting between Alara and Theron with barely concealed calculation. Your Majesty, about the marriage alliance. Perhaps we should discuss. There will be no marriage alliance. Vivienne. Theron's voice was flat, final. My mate has been found. The bond is recognized. Any discussion of political marriages is now irrelevant. Vivian's mask slipped for just a moment, fury and something darker flashing across her features. Then she smiled, a brittle, dangerous expression. Of course. How wonderful for you both. Congratulations. The word dripped with venom. She swept from the room, her posture rigid with barely controlled rage. When they were alone, Theron turned to Alara. That was risky. If Vivian is involved in the conspiracy, you just showed your hand. Let her know I am watching, Alara said. Let her know I am not the helpless Omega she tried to have killed. Maybe it will make her nervous enough to make a mistake. Theron studied her for a long moment. Then a slow smile spread across his face. You are full of surprises, Lady Alara Thorn of the First Light. He offered his hand. Come. If we are going to teach you to harness your power, we should start now. The moon is in a favorable phase, and your wolf will be close to the surface. She took his hand, that now familiar electricity sparking between them. What exactly will this training involve? Pain, frustration, a lot of falling down, and hopefully by the end of it, control over the extraordinary gift you have been given. He pulled her closer, his other hand coming up to cup her cheek. But I will be with you every step. That is a promise. Standing there, feeling the bond hum, between them and her wolf purring with contentment at his nearness, Elara felt something she had never experienced before. Hope. Not just for survival, but for a future she could not yet imagine. A future where she was powerful and protected, where she belonged, where she was seen and valued, where she was loved. I am afraid, she admitted quietly. Good, Theron said, echoing his words from days ago. Fear keeps you cautious. Cautious keeps you alive. He leaned down, his forehead resting against hers. But you do not face your fears alone anymore, Elara. Whatever is coming, we face it together. The training grounds were located in a remote section of the palace grounds, surrounded by ancient wards designed to contain magical surges. Theron explained that they were originally built for training young wolves of the First Light bloodline, back when such training was necessary. No one has used these grounds in 300 years, he said as they walked through gates inscribed with lunar symbols. But the wards are still active. Whatever power you unleash here will be contained. Elara could feel the wards humming, could sense the magic that saturated this place. Her wolf paced restlessly, eager to run, to test the limits of this new strength. First lesson, Theron said, moving to stand in the center of the training circle. Shifting at will. Right now, your wolf is close to the surface because the seal just broke. But you need to learn to call her and dismiss her on command. That control is essential. He began to strip off his shirt, revealing a torso marked with scars and hard-earned muscle. Elara tried not to stare and failed utterly. The easiest way to learn is to follow my lead. Watch how I shift, feel how I control it. Your wolf will recognize mine and instinctively mirror the process. Before she could respond, he was shifting, his form blurring and reforming into a massive wolf the color of midnight, with those same silver eyes that seemed to see straight through her. He was huge, an alpha in every sense of the word, radiating power and control. Then he sat, patient, waiting for her to follow. Elara closed her eyes and reached for her wolf. The creature surged forward eagerly, wanting out, wanting to run with the magnificent male before them. But Elara held on, trying to control the pace, to guide the shift, rather than being overwhelmed by it. It was like trying to hold back a waterfall. The shift took her, faster than last night, but still chaotic. When she opened her eyes again, she was on 4 legs, her senses exploding with input. Theron's wolf approached her slowly, his movements graceful and deliberate. He circled her once, assessing, then nudged her shoulder with his muzzle. Run with me. The command came through the pack bond, enhanced by their mate connection. Let your wolf remember what she was born to do. And they ran. Through the training grounds, through the forest beyond, 2 wolves racing beneath the afternoon sun. Elara had never felt so free, so powerful, so utterly alive. Her wolf knew things her human mind had never learned: how to dodge trees at full speed, how to leap fallen logs, how to read the wind for scents and information. Theron stayed beside her, matching her pace, occasionally steering her away from hazards with a gentle nudge or a warning growl. She could feel his approval through the bond, his pleasure at seeing her embrace this part of herself. When they finally stopped, panting, beside a clear stream, Elara felt more centered than she ever had in her life. Theron shifted back to human form with practiced ease, and Elara concentrated on following his example. The shift back was getting smoother, more controlled. Within seconds, she stood on 2 legs again, breathing hard and grinning. That was incredible, she gasped. Theron smiled, a rare, genuine expression that made him look years younger. You are a natural. Most wolves need weeks to run that smoothly their first time. His expression grew more serious. Now comes the harder part. Shifting back and forth rapidly, until you can do it in seconds without even thinking about it. That is when it becomes a weapon, rather than just a transformation. They trained until dusk, Elara shifting back and forth dozens of times until her body ached, and her mind felt wrung out. But by the end, she could shift in under 10 seconds, maintaining control throughout the transformation. Theron declared himself satisfied with her progress, and insisted they return to the palace for food and rest. As they walked back, both in human form and properly clothed again, Elara felt brave enough to ask the question that had been nagging at her. When you said I was your mate, did you mean it? Or was it just to protect me politically? Theron stopped walking, turning to face her fully. I never say anything I do not mean, Elara. From the moment you touched my hand in that throne room, I felt the bond snap into place. It has been 3 centuries since I felt anything close to that pull. And even then it was nothing like this. You are mine, as surely as I am yours. The goddess herself designed us for each other. He reached out, tucking a strand of her hair behind her ear. But I will not force the bond on you. You have been through tremendous upheaval. Your entire life has changed in the span of days. If you need time to come to terms with it, I will wait. I have lived 300 years. I can be patient. Elara's heart clenched at the vulnerability in his words, the careful hope in his eyes. This powerful king, offering her time and space despite the bond that must be pulling at him as insistently as it pulled at her. I feel it too, she admitted. The pull. The certainty that I am supposed to be with you. It terrifies me because it is so strong, so overwhelming. But I do not want you to wait, Theron. I do not want to waste time being afraid of something that feels so right. His eyes blazed with silver. Fire. Elara. Just her name, but it contained volumes. Then he was kissing her, one hand cupping the back of her head, and the other wrapping around her waist, pulling her against him. The kiss was fire and lightning, possession and promise, everything she had never known she wanted. She melted into him, her hands fisting in his shirt, kissing him back with all the newfound confidence her wolf had given her. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Theron rested his forehead against hers. You undo me, he murmured. 300 years of control, and you shatter it with a single touch. Good, Elara said, echoing his own words back to him with a smile. I am tired of being the only one who feels off balance. He laughed, the sound warm and free. Come, let's get you fed before I forget every principle of honor I possess and claim you right here in the forest. That night, Elara dined in Theron's private quarters, just the two of them and the guardian watching from the shadows. They talked for hours, sharing stories and histories. Theron told her about the early days of his rule, the wars he had fought, the alliances he had forged. She told him about growing up in the orphanage, about discovering her love of books, about the small joys she had found in her invisible life. I used to watch you sometimes, she admitted, feeling her cheeks heat. When you came to the library to consult the old records, I would hide behind shelves and just watch you work. You were always so focused, so completely absorbed. It was mesmerizing. Theron's smile was amused and pleased. I know. I could sense you there, though I never understood why you hid. Now I do. You were afraid I would see you. I was afraid you would look right through me, she corrected. The way everyone did. I was furniture, background, nothing worth noticing. That ends now, Theron said firmly. You are the most important person in this kingdom, Elara. First light bloodline, my mate. And if I am, being honest, probably the key to whatever darkness is coming. You will never be invisible again. The next morning brought news that shattered their brief peace. Marcus burst into Theron's study where they were reviewing maps of the barrier weak points. Your Majesty, we found the Moonstone Shard. Or rather, what remains of it. Theron shot to his feet. Where? In the catacombs, not far from where you performed Lady Elara's unbinding ritual. It has been shattered, destroyed beyond any hope of repair. Marcus's expression was grim. The barrier section it was protecting has already begun to fail. Reports are coming in of shadow creatures crossing over near the eastern border. Alara felt ice flood her veins. How long until the barrier collapses completely? Days. Maybe a week if we are fortunate. Marcus looked between them. We need to evacuate the eastern settlements and mobilize the army. And we need to find whoever is doing this before they destroy another artifact. Theron's face was carved from stone, his eyes blazing with fury. Send word to the other kingdoms. Tell them what has happened and that we require their forces. This is no longer just our problem. If the barrier falls, the Shadow Realm will consume everything. As Marcus left to carry out his orders, Vivienne appeared in the doorway. Her expression was oddly satisfied, almost triumphant. I told you this would happen, Your Majesty. The moment you elevated that girl, chaos followed. Perhaps the goddess is displeased with your choices. Theron moved so fast that even Alara's enhanced senses barely tracked it. He had Vivienne pinned against the wall, his forearm across her throat, before she could even gasp. Choose your next words very carefully, Lady Blackthorn. You are dangerously close to treason. Vivienne's eyes were wide, but there was no fear in them, only cold calculation. I speak only truth, Your Majesty. The artifact was whole until she appeared. Now it is destroyed. Perhaps you should consider that she is not the salvation you believe, but the very thing that will doom us all. Ilara's wolf snarled, wanting to tear this woman apart for her insolence. But something Vivienne said nagged at her, a piece that did not quite fit. When was the artifact destroyed? She asked quietly. Theron released Vivienne but did not step back. According to the traces Marcus's team found, sometime in the last 48 hours, the destruction magic was recent enough to leave residual signatures. Ilara's mind raced. My unbinding was 3 nights ago. If the artifact was destroyed in the last 2 days, then whoever did it acted after I came into my power, after my heritage was revealed. Understanding dawned in Theron's eyes. They are accelerating their plans. They know you are awake now, and they fear what you might do to stop them. He whirled on Vivienne. Who are you working with, Vivienne? Who paid you to frame Alara and push for her execution? You have lost your mind, Vivienne hissed, rubbing her throat. I have served this crown faithfully for a century. I would never betray you or the kingdom. Then you will not object to a truth reading, Theron said coldly. Magistress Senna can perform one. If you are innocent, you have nothing to fear. For the first time, genuine fear flashed across Vivienne's face. You cannot be serious. Truth readings are barbaric, invasive. My thoughts are my own. Then you refuse? Theron's voice was dangerously soft. Refusal will be taken as an admission of guilt. Vivienne's face twisted with rage, and something darker. You will regret this. All of this. When the darkness comes, when your precious mate fails to save you, remember that I warned you. She turned and fled before Theron could stop her, moving with inhuman speed. Theron cursed and moved to follow, but Ilara grabbed his arm. Let her go. She will lead us to whoever she is working with. She closed her eyes, reaching out with senses she was only beginning to understand. The Guardian had shown her this, in flashes of instinct and ancient knowledge. She could track Vivienne through the palace, could sense her movements like a beacon of frantic energy. She is heading for the old chapel, the one that was sealed after the Great Purge. Theron's eyes widened. That chapel is on holy ground. It was built by the First Light bloodline as a place of worship and power. If Vivienne is going there, then that is where her allies are waiting. Ilara finished. We need to go, now. They ran through the palace corridors, the Guardian flowing beside them like living shadow. Theron sent out a mental call through the pack bonds, summoning warriors to meet them at the chapel. But Ilara knew they could not wait. Whatever was happening in that chapel, it was happening now. The chapel doors were sealed with chains and warnings, but Ilara felt her power surge at the proximity to this sacred place. The chains melted away at her touch, the doors swinging open to reveal a scene from Nightmare. Vivian stood in the center of the chapel, her hands raised, chanting in a language that made Ilara's ears bleed. Around her, a circle of robed figures maintained a ritual, their combined power creating a vortex of shadow that was tearing a hole in reality itself. And suspended above the altar, bound in chains of dark magic, was another of the 7 artifacts, the Starlight Crown, pulsing with desperate light as it fought against the corruption, trying to consume it. "Stop!" Theron's voice boomed through the chapel, carrying the weight of his alpha command. Several of the robed figures stumbled, their concentration breaking. But Vivian only laughed, a sound of madness and triumph. "Too late, Your Majesty. The crown will fall, just as the shard fell. And when the barrier collapses, the new age will begin. An age where power belongs to those strong enough to seize it, not those who inherit it by accident of birth." She turned her gaze to Ilara, and there was such hatred there it was palpable. "You should have died in that village with the rest of your cursed bloodline. My family has worked for 300 years to ensure the First Light would never return to claim what you believe is yours. We will not fail now." Understanding crashed over Ilara. "Your family orchestrated the Great Purge. You destroyed the First Light bloodline because you wanted the throne. We wanted to free the wolves from the tyranny of destined rulers," Vivian corrected. "The First Light hoarded power, claimed divine right. We brought them down, established a system where strength and cunning mattered more than blood. And then this fool," she gestured at Theron with contempt, "ruled for 3 centuries, becoming everything we sought to destroy. But no matter. When the Shadow Realm breaks through, all kingdoms will fall. From the ashes, we will build something new. Something better." Theron moved, shifting mid-stride into his wolf form, a black blur of lethal intent. But Vivian was ready. She threw power at him, shadow magic that wrapped around his wolf like chains, bringing him crashing to the ground. Ilara felt his pain through the bond, felt her own wolf roar with fury at seeing their mate hurt. Power exploded from her, instinctive and overwhelming. The chapel filled with white light, burning away shadows, shattering the ritual circle. The robed figures screamed, some disintegrating entirely under the onslaught of First Light power. Vivian threw up a shield, but Ilara could see it cracking, failing under the assault. "You know nothing of power," Ilara heard herself say, her voice layered with something ancient and terrible. "You are a child playing with forces you cannot comprehend. The First Light does not hoard power. We are the power. We are what stands between this world and the endless dark. And you have just made a fatal mistake." She reached out, not with her hands but with her will, and seized. The dark magic binding the Starlight Crown. It fought her, burned her, tried to corrupt her from within. But Ilara held firm, pulling on reserves of strength she had not known she possessed. The Guardian moved to her side, adding its ancient power to hers. Together, they ripped the corruption away from the artifact. The crown fell, and Ilara caught it instinctively. The moment it touched her hands, power flooded through her, knowledge and memory from every First Light who had worn this crown. Before her, she saw the creation of the artifacts, the binding of the barrier, the love and sacrifice that had protected the world for millennia. And she understood. The artifacts were not just tools. They were anchors, tied to the First Light bloodline itself. They could only be wielded, only be protected, by those who carried that ancient blood. Vivian had never stood a chance of controlling them. She could only destroy, could only tear down what she lacked the power to claim. Ilara placed the crown on her head. It settled there as if it had been made for her, and she supposed it had. Made for her ancestors, made for her, made for whoever would come after. The power of it sang through her veins, connected her to the other artifacts scattered across the kingdoms, showed her the gaps in the barrier and how to seal them. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who loves epic romance. Tell me in the comments, did you see this ending coming? She looked at Vivian, who, was staring at her with dawning horror. "You wanted to see the true power of the first light? Let me show you." Alara raised her hands, and the chapel responded. This was holy ground, sanctified by her bloodline centuries ago. It remembered who should command here. Light erupted from every stone, every carved symbol, every sacred space. It wrapped around Vivian and the remaining conspirators, binding them with power they could not break or corrupt. Theron shook off the shadow chains, returning to human form. He was bloodied and bruised, but his eyes shone with fierce pride as he looked at her. "Remind me never to make you angry." Alara felt a smile tug at her lips, despite the seriousness of the situation. "I will keep that in mind." She approached Vivian, the crown's power showing her everything. Every plot, every ally, every dark deed. "You will tell us everything. Where the other conspirators are. How many artifacts you have already destroyed. What your plan was for breaking the barrier completely. You will tell us because the crown compels truth from those who stand in its light." And Vivian did. The words spilled from her lips against her will, her face contorted with rage and helplessness. There were 13 others in the conspiracy, scattered across the 5 kingdoms. They had managed to destroy 2 artifacts before Alara awakened. They had planned to destroy all 7 within a month, bringing down the barrier and unleashing chaos they believed they could control. They had killed the last survivors of the First Light bloodline 3 centuries ago, or so they thought. The child who escaped, the infant Alara, had been hidden by a loyal servant who used the death seal to protect her. That servant had died placing the seal, as Senna had guessed, but her sacrifice had ensured the bloodline survived. Theron's warriors arrived as Vivian finished her confession. He ordered the conspirators taken to the deepest cells, to be held until their conspirators could be rounded up. As the chapel emptied, Alara remained standing in the center, the crown still on her head, feeling the weight of what had just been revealed. Theron approached carefully, as if afraid she might shatter. "Are you all right?" She considered the question. Was she all right? She had just learned that her entire family was murdered by a conspiracy that lasted 3 centuries. She had just killed several people with power she barely understood. She was wearing a crown that showed her the fate of the entire world and how precarious that fate was. "No," she said honestly. "I am not all right, but I will be." She turned to face him, seeing the concern and love in his eyes. "We stopped them today, but there are 11 more out there, and 2 artifacts are already destroyed. The barrier is failing. Then we fight," Theron said simply. He took her hands, his warmth grounding her. "We find the other conspirators. We protect the remaining artifacts. We hold the barrier until we can find a way to repair it, and we do it together." Alara removed the crown, though she could still feel its power humming at the edge of her awareness. "I do not know how to be what they need me to be. A queen, a savior. I was a librarian 3 days ago." "You were never just a librarian," Theron corrected gently. "You were always this, waiting to be recognized. The power was always inside you, Alara. The crown just helped you remember how to use it." He pulled her closer, his arms wrapping around her in an embrace that felt like coming home. "And you are not alone in this. You have me. You have the Guardian. You have an entire kingdom that will fight for you once they understand what you are." She leaned into his strength, letting herself take comfort in his presence. "What do we do now?" "Now, we prepare for war. We reach out to the other kingdoms and warn them about the conspiracy. We track down every member and end this threat." He tilted her chin up so she was looking directly into his eyes. "And when this is over, when the danger has passed and the barrier is secure, I am going to court you properly, with flowers and poetry and all the romantic gestures you deserve. I am going to marry you in front of every wolf in the 5 kingdoms, and I am going to spend the rest of my very long life making sure you never doubt how precious you are." Tears pricked at Alara's eyes, but they were not tears of sadness. "That sounds perfect. But first, Theron said, his expression shifting to something fiercer, more primal. I am going to mark you as mine, complete the mate bond fully and finally, because I will not risk another day where someone might think they can harm you without answering to me. Ilara's wolf purred approval, desire flooding through her at the promise in his words. Yes, she breathed. Please. Theron kissed her then, deep and claiming, pouring everything he felt through the bond. When he pulled back, his eyes were glowing with wolf light. Not here. Not in this place that was just tainted by darkness. Come with me. He led her from the chapel, through the palace to his private chambers. The guardian followed them to the door, then settled outside, a silent sentinel ensuring their privacy. Inside, Theron was both gentle and demanding, reverent and possessive. He worshipped every inch of her skin, learned every sound that made her gasp, every touch that made her arch into him. And when he finally claimed her, sinking his teeth into the juncture of her neck and shoulder to complete the marking, Ilara felt the mate bond snap into place with such force it stole her breath. They were one. 2 souls, 2 wolves, 2 hearts beating in perfect synchronization. She could feel everything he felt, the love and desire and fierce protectiveness. And she gave him everything in return, holding nothing back. When it was over, they lay tangled together, hearts still racing, the mark on her neck thrumming with power. Mine, Theron murmured, tracing the mark with reverent fingers. Mine, Ilara agreed, feeling her own wolf settle with deep contentment. They spent the night in each other's arms, stealing these precious hours of peace before the coming storm. Because both of them knew this was only the beginning. The conspiracy was larger than anyone had imagined. The barrier was failing. Shadow creatures were already crossing over. But as dawn broke, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose, Ilara felt something she had not felt in years. Hope. She was no longer invisible, no longer powerless, no longer alone. She was First Light. She was the Alpha King's mate. She was the one who would stand against the darkness, with the most powerful wolf in 5 kingdoms at her side and an ancient guardian at her back. Let the conspirators come. Let the shadows gather. She had been hidden and suppressed for 24 years, her power bound by those who feared what she might become. But the chains were broken now. The wolf was free, and Ilara Thorne was done hiding. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of activity. Theron sent emissaries to the other 4 kingdoms, warning them of the conspiracy and requesting an emergency council. Magistra Senna worked with Ilara daily, teaching her to harness the crown's power without being overwhelmed by it. Marcus coordinated with warriors from across the realm, building an army to defend the weakening sections of the barrier. And Ilara spent every free moment in the Ukiyo library, poring over ancient texts about the artifacts in the First Light bloodline. She discovered that her ancestors had not just protected the barrier, but actively maintained it through ritual and magic. The artifacts were designed to function with First Light power channeled through them. Without someone of the bloodline to maintain them, they would eventually fail on their own. That was why the conspirators had been so desperate to eliminate her. With her death, the artifacts would have become inert within a generation. The barrier would have fallen, and their vision of a new world could be realized. But she was alive, and she was learning. The Council of 5 Kingdoms met in Theron's throne room, a gathering that had not occurred in over a century. Alpha King Darius of the Western Kingdom was ancient and stern, his hair white as snow. Alpha Queen Seraphina of the Southern Kingdom was beautiful and cunning, her reputation as a strategist preceding her. Alpha Casimir of the Eye, Northern Kingdom, was young and aggressive, having only recently taken his throne, and Alpha Queen Morgana of the Eastern Kingdom, where the barrier had first failed, looked tired and desperate. Ilara stood beside Theron's throne, wearing the starlight crown and a gown of silver that caught the light with every movement. She had insisted on being present despite some protests that this was a matter for ruling alphas. Theron had simply stated that she outranked everyone in the room by blood, and That had been the end of the discussion. "The barrier is failing," Queen Morgana began without preamble. "Shadow creatures are crossing over nightly in my territory. We have lost 3 villages already. My warriors fight them back, but for every one we kill, 2 more appear. It is the same along our northern border," Casimir added grimly. "These are not mindless beasts. They are organized, strategic. Someone is directing them. The same someone who orchestrated the destruction of 2 artifacts," Theron said. He gestured to Marcus, who presented the evidence they had gathered. Names, dates, connections. The conspiracy web stretched across all 5 kingdoms. Several of the counselors paled as they recognized names. Queen Seraphina leaned forward. "You are saying this conspiracy has members in every kingdom? That this threat comes from within as well as without?" "Yes." Elara spoke for the first time, her voice clear and strong. "The conspirators want the barrier to fail. They believe they can control what comes through. Use the shadow creatures as weapons to reshape the world according to their vision. They are wrong, but their actions are bringing us all to the brink of destruction." Darius studied her with ancient, knowing eyes. "You are the one who woke, yes? The first light that was thought lost? I am Elara Thorn, last of the First Light bloodline, and I am the only one who can restore the artifacts and maintain the barrier." She felt Theron's support through the bond, his confidence in her bolstering her own. "But I cannot do it alone. I need time to learn, resources to work with, and protection while I am vulnerable. The conspirators will come for me. They must, because as long as I live, their plan cannot succeed." "What do you propose?" Seraphina asked. Elara took a breath. This was it, the moment she stepped fully into her role. "I propose a unified defense. Pool our resources, our warriors, our knowledge. Seal the borders where the barrier is. Weakest and hunt down every conspirator before they can destroy more artifacts. And I will journey to each artifact's location, restore what I can, and strengthen what remains. You ask us to put aside centuries of autonomy, to place our trust in a girl who was unknown days ago," Casimir said, though his tone was more curious than hostile. "Why should we?" "Because the alternative is the end of everything we know," Theron said coldly. "The Shadow Realm does not discriminate. It will consume us all equally. Set aside your pride, Alpha Casimir. This is not about politics or power plays. This is about survival." The room was silent for a long moment. Then Morgana stood. "I pledge my kingdom's support. My people are dying. If the First Light can save them, I will give her whatever she needs." One by one, the others stood as well, pledging their support. Even Casimir, though he did so with visible reluctance. Elara felt the weight of their expectations settle on her shoulders like a physical thing. But Theron's hand found hers under the table, squeezing gently. Together, his touch reminded her. They would face this together. The plan was set in motion immediately. Warriors from all 5 kingdoms converged on the weak points in the barrier, holding the line against incursions. Theron's network of spies began systematically tracking down conspirators, bringing them to justice one by one, and Elara began her journey to the 5 remaining artifacts, Theron and the Guardian, always at her side. The first was the Lunar Blade, kept in the Western Kingdom's highest tower. When Elara touched it, she felt its power recognize her, flowing into her and through her. She channeled her own power back, repairing cracks in its structure, reinforcing the magic that held it together. The process left her drained, but the blade shone with renewed strength. The second was the Eclipse Mirror, hidden deep in the Southern Kingdom's desert. This one fought her, its power corrupted by proximity to a breach in the barrier. Shadow magic had seeped into it, trying to twist it into something dark. Elara had to fight for control, her First Light power burning away the corruption inch by agonizing inch. She nearly lost herself in the battle, her consciousness fragmenting under the assault. But Theron's voice reached her through the bond, anchoring her, reminding her who she was. She emerged victorious, The mirror cleansed and restored, but the cost left her unconscious for 2 days. The third and fourth artifacts went more smoothly, though each took a toll. By the time they reached the fifth, the Flameheart kept in the Northern Kingdom's volcano fortress. Elara was exhausted to her core. "You need to rest," Theron argued as they approached the fortress. "You are pushing yourself too hard. If you collapse." "If I rest, more people die," Elara countered. "Every day the barrier weakens, more villages fall. I can rest when this is done. And if you burn yourself out? Before you finish? If you die trying to do this alone?" Theron grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to look at him. "You are not invincible, Elara. You are allowed to be human, to need help." "I do not have that luxury," she said, her voice breaking. "I am the last of my line. If I fail, everything fails. The pressure of it, Theron, it is crushing me, but I cannot stop. I cannot." He pulled her into his arms, holding her as she shook with exhaustion and fear. "Then let me carry some of that. Wait. Let me help. I may not have your bloodline, but I have 3 centuries of power built up. Use it. Use me. Let me share this burden." Through the bond, she felt his sincerity, his desperate need to ease her suffering. And she realized he was right. She had been trying to do this all alone, to prove she was worthy of the crown and the legacy. But that was not what the First Light bloodline was about. They had never ruled alone. They had always had mates, partners, guardians who shared the load. "Show me how," she whispered. That night, Theron taught her to draw on their mate bond in a new way. Not just for emotional support, but for actual power. Their bond was a conduit, allowing them to share strength and magic. It was intimate and overwhelming, like nothing Elara had ever experienced. When she approached the Flameheart the next day, she was not alone. Theron's power flowed through the bond, supplementing her own. The Guardian added its ancient strength. Together, the 3 of them restored the artifact, and this time Elara did not collapse. She stood tall, the Flameheart blazing with renewed power in her hands. 4 artifacts restored, 3 to go. But the conspirators were not idle. As Elara's group traveled toward the 6th artifact, the Storm Pearl kept in an island fortress. They were ambushed. 20 wolves fell upon them in the darkness, all bearing the mark of the conspiracy. They were skilled warriors, trained specifically to kill. The battle was brutal. Theron fought with the fury of a mated male protecting his chosen, his massive black wolf tearing through enemies with savage efficiency. The Guardian was a force of nature, its cosmic power rendering attackers into shadows and dust. And Elara, wearing the Starlight Crown and wielding power she was only beginning to understand, became something legend would speak of for generations. She did not shift to her wolf. She fought in human form, light blazing from her hands, the crown amplifying her power 1,000-fold. She unmade the conspirators, broke their dark magic, left nothing but ash in her wake. When it was over, when the last enemy had fallen, Elara stood in the center of devastation, breathing hard, the crown glowing so brightly it was almost painful to look at. Theron approached her carefully. "Elara, you can power down now. They are gone." She looked at him, and for a moment he saw something in her eyes that made his blood run cold. Power without limit, barely restrained. Then she blinked, and she was Elara again, his mate, exhausted and shaken. "I could have killed them all with a thought," she whispered. "I felt it, the power to simply erase them from existence. It would have been so easy. But you did not," Theron said firmly. He cupped her face, making sure she focused on him. "You controlled it. You used only what was necessary. That is the difference between you and them, Elara. They wanted power to dominate. You wield it to protect." She nodded shakily, and he watched as she consciously pulled the power back, dimming the crown's glow. This was the real danger, he realized. Not that she might fail, but that she might become so powerful she lost herself in it. He would have to watch for that, anchor her to her humanity through the bond. They reached the Storm Pearl 3 days later. The restoration went smoothly, and with Theron's power to supplement her own, Elara felt in control throughout the process. 5 artifacts. Restored. 2 to go. But the 7th artifact, the Dawn Stone, was missing. It had been in the Eastern Kingdom's care, but when they arrived at its vault, they found only destruction. The conspirators had struck while they were traveling, destroying the Dawnstone before it could be restored. Queen Morgana was devastated. It was my responsibility. I failed. No, Elara said, studying the remnants of the artifact. They timed this perfectly. Waited until they knew we could not reach it in time. This was strategic. She knelt among the shattered pieces, feeling the fading magic within them. An idea formed, desperate and dangerous. I can rebuild it. Theron's head snapped around. What? The crown shows me the pattern, the original structure. If I can gather enough power, channel it precisely enough, I can forge the artifact anew. She looked up at him, knowing what she was about to ask. But it will take more power than I have. More than you and the Guardian together can provide. I will need to draw on the other 4 artifacts simultaneously. Magistra Senna, who had been traveling with them, paled. That has never been done. The strain of channeling that much power through a single vessel could kill you. It could burn you out from the inside. I know, Elara said quietly. But what choice do we have? If the Dawnstone is not restored, there will be a permanent weak point in the barrier. Eventually it will spread, corrupting the other artifacts. Everything we have done will be for nothing. Theron was shaking his head before she even finished. No, there has to be another way. There is not. You know there is not. This is what I was born for, Theron. To protect the barrier, whatever the cost. She stood, taking his hands in hers. I need you to trust me. To believe that I can do this and survive. It is not about trust, he said hoarsely. It is about the fact that I just found you. I just claimed you as mine. I am not ready to lose you. Lose me not. She pulled him down until their foreheads touched. I am stronger than you think. Stronger than I think. And I will have you anchoring me. The bond will keep me grounded. Keep me from being consumed by the power. I believe that. I need you to believe it too. She felt his internal struggle through the bond, his terror of losing her warring with his faith in her strength. Finally, he nodded. Tell me what to do. They prepared for 3 days. Senna drew intricate ritual circles, created wards to contain the power surge, enlisted the help of the strongest witches in the Eastern Kingdom to maintain the protective barriers. Elara meditated with the Guardian, learning to open herself fully to power without losing her sense of self. And every night, she fell asleep in Theron's arms, drawing strength from his presence. The night before the ritual, Theron made love to her with a desperation that bordered on violence, as if he could somehow mark her so deeply that death itself could not claim her. Afterward, they lay tangled together, neither wanting to sleep and lose these final hours. If something goes wrong, Elara began, but Theron covered her mouth with his hand. No, we do not speak of that possibility. You will succeed. You will survive. And then we will finish this war, rebuild what has been broken, and live the life we both deserve. He removed his hand, replacing it with his lips, in a kiss that was achingly tender. You are my mate, my queen, my everything. Fate would not be so cruel as to give you to me only to rip you away. I love you, Elara whispered. It was the first time she had said the words, though she had felt them for weeks. Theron's eyes blazed. Say it again. I love you, Theron Nightshade. I love your strength and your patience, your fierce protectiveness and your gentle touch. I love how you make me feel powerful and cherished at once. I love you. I love you, he replied, his voice rough with emotion. I have loved you since the moment. The Guardian bowed at your feet, and I realized the goddess had finally answered a prayer I did not know I had been making for 300 years. I love you, Elara Thorn. First light, my mate, my queen. They made love again. Slower this time, savoring every touch, every kiss, every whispered word, memorizing each other, just in case. When dawn came, they rose together and prepared for what would either be triumph or tragedy. The ritual space was in the center of Queen Morgana's fortress, a vast courtyard open to the sky. The shattered pieces of the Dawnstone were arranged in a circle, and Elara would stand at the center. The representatives of the other kingdoms had brought their artifacts. The Lunar Blade, Eclipse Mirror, Storm Pearl, and Flameheart arranged at the 4 cardinal points. The Starlight Crown was already on Elara's head. The 6th artifact, the Tidal Orb, was secured beneath the fortress, too unstable to move but close enough that Elara could draw on. Its power. Theron stood outside the ritual circle, his hands pressed against the barrier that would contain the power surge. Through the bond, she could feel his terror and his faith warring within him. The Guardian took its place at her side, ready to lend its strength. Senna began the chant, and one by one, the artifacts lit up, their power building. Elara opened herself to them, becoming a living conduit. Pain hit her immediately, searing and absolute. It was like being struck by lightning. Continuously, every nerve in her body screaming protest. But she held on, pulling the power through herself, shaping it with her will. She reached for the pattern the crown showed her, the original structure of the Dawnstone. It was complex beyond imagining, layers upon layers of interwoven magic and intent. She began to weave, pulling strands of power from each artifact and braiding them together. The pain increased exponentially. She could feel herself starting to fracture, her consciousness splitting under the assault. The power wanted to consume her, burn her to ash and scatter her to the winds. But then Theron's voice cut through the agony, through the chaos. His voice through the bond, steady and certain. You are Elara Thorn, first light, last of your bloodline and first of a new age. You are my mate, my queen, my heart. You are not alone. I am here. I am anchoring you. Come back to me. Always come back to me. She seized onto that voice like a lifeline, used it to remember who she was beneath the power. Slowly, painfully, she regained control. The pattern became clearer. Her weaving grew more confident. The Dawnstone began to take shape, reforming from shattered pieces into wholeness. Power continued to pour through her, more than any being should be able to handle. But she was not just any being. She was First Light, and this was what she was made for. With a final surge of will, she completed the pattern and sealed it. The Dawnstone blazed to life, perfect and whole, hovering in the air above the remains of its shattered predecessor. The power released, no longer needing to flow through her. Elara collapsed, and Theron was there instantly, the barrier falling away the moment the ritual ended. He caught her before she hit the ground, cradling her against his chest. Elara, open your eyes. Look at me. She struggled to obey, her body feeling like it weighed 1,000 pounds. When she finally managed to crack her eyes open, his face swam into view, pale and terrified. Did I do it? She whispered. You did it, he confirmed, his voice breaking. The artifact is whole. The barrier is holding. You succeeded, my love. Now please, please stay with me. Not going anywhere, she managed, though even speaking took monumental effort. Too stubborn to die now. He laughed, a sound somewhere between joy and sob, and pressed his face into her hair. You terrified me. Your heart stopped twice during the ritual. Twice I felt you slipping away. Through the bond. But I came back. She lifted a shaking hand to his face. I promised I would not leave you. I keep my promises. Magistra Senna was there, running diagnostic spells, her expression amazed. She should be dead. By all rights, channeling that much power should have burned her out completely. But somehow, the mate bond, The Guardian's voice resonated through all their minds. Stronger than any magic, more enduring than any power. It anchored her to this world, gave her reason to cling to life when power would have swept her away. Love saved her, as it has saved countless first lights before her. Elara spent a week recovering, her body slowly healing from the trauma of channeling divine levels of power. Theron never left her side, and she drew comfort from his constant presence. News arrived that the last of the conspirators had been captured. With their leadership destroyed and their plan in ruins, the remaining members had either surrendered or gone into hiding. The barrier was holding strong now, all 7 artifacts restored and functioning. Shadow creature incursions had dropped to near zero. The crisis was over. But its aftermath would take years to fully resolve. When Elara was finally strong enough to travel, they returned to Theron's kingdom. The palace had been transformed in their absence. What had once been formal and cold now felt alive with celebration. Word had spread of what she had done, how she had saved them all. The people lined the streets as they entered the city, cheering and throwing flowers. Elara felt overwhelmed by the adulation, but Theron squeezed her hand. They need to celebrate. They need a hero. Let them have this. The coronation was held a month later, a ceremony that had not been performed in 300 years. Elara knelt before the assembled leaders of 5 kingdoms and was formally recognized as High Queen, First Light Returned, Keeper of the Artifacts. Theron knelt beside her, and they were crowned. Together, mates and co-rulers, their bond a matter of public record and celebration. Lady Vivienne and the other conspirators faced justice, their trials swift and their punishments severe. Elara felt no satisfaction in it, only a deep sadness at the waste of it all. So many lives lost, so much destruction, all because some could not accept that power came with responsibility, rather than just privilege. But from tragedy came new beginnings. The 5 kingdoms, unified by shared crisis, began to discuss more permanent alliances. Trade agreements were forged, defensive pacts signed, cultural exchanges initiated. A new age of cooperation had begun, with Elara and Theron at its center. On a quiet evening 6 months after the Dawnstone's restoration, Elara stood on the balcony of their private chambers, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. Theron came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "Everything that has changed. Everything I have become." She leaned back into his embrace. 6 months ago, I was nobody. An Omega librarian, invisible and powerless. Now I am a queen, a legend, responsible for the fate of millions. Does it frighten you still? Sometimes, she admitted. But mostly I feel grateful. Grateful that I survived. Grateful that I found you. Grateful for the chance to make a difference, to be part of something greater than myself. She turned in his arms to face him, and grateful for what comes next. Theron's eyes sharpened with curiosity. What comes next? Elara took his hand and placed it on her stomach, watching as understanding dawned across his features. Our heir, the next generation of First Light, due in about 7 months if Magistra Senna's calculations are correct. For a long moment, Theron simply stared at her, his expression cycling through shock, awe, and pure joy. Then he was kissing her, lifting her off her feet and spinning her around, laughing with delight. "A child," he breathed. "We are going to have a child." "Are you happy?" Elara asked, though she could feel the answer through the bond. Happy does not begin to cover it. He set her down gently, his hands framing her face. 300 years I walked this earth alone, certain I would never know this joy. And now I have everything. A mate who challenges and completes me. A kingdom at peace. And a child on the way. The goddess has blessed me beyond measure. Have blessed each other, Elara corrected. Fate brought us together, but we chose to fight for this. Chose to believe in each other even when it seemed impossible. That is what makes it real. That night, they made love slowly, carefully. Theron reverent in his treatment of her body that now carried their child. And afterward, as she drifted toward sleep, Elara thought about the girl she had been such a short time ago. Invisible. Powerless. Afraid. That girl was gone. Transformed by fire, pain, and love into someone new. Someone strong enough to wear a crown and wield divine power. Someone brave enough to face down darkness and emerge victorious. Someone worthy of the legacy she had inherited and the future she was building. The Alpha King had raised his voice, and the ancient creature had lowered its head to her, recognizing what the world had failed to see, that she was never meant to be invisible. She was always meant to shine. And now, with Theron at her side, a child growing. Within her, and 5 kingdoms looking to her for leadership, Elara Thorne, High Queen of the First Light, finally understood what her life had been preparing her for. Not just survival, not just power, but the chance to build something lasting and beautiful from the ashes of tragedy. The chance to be everything she was meant to be. The chance to be free. Outside their window, the Guardian kept watch, patient and eternal. And in the vaults beneath the palace, 7 ancient artifacts glowed with renewed strength, their magic flowing through channels that led to the barrier and beyond. The world was safe. The future was bright. And love, as always, had conquered all.